Welcome to Vogel Voices, a podcast put on by Vogel, which is a nonprofit here in Dallas, Texas. The purpose of the podcast is really to explain the impact that Vogel has on homeless children and their families here in Dallas. Good morning and welcome to the episode number 9 of the Vogel Voices podcast. The Vogel Voices podcast is meant to inform the community about the work done by Vogel Alcove. Our mission is to help young children and their families prevent and overcome the traumatic effects of homelessness. I'm Karen Hughes. I am the CEO of Vogel Alcove, and so we're glad to have you join us today. Today, my guests are Jordan Neufeld, who is our Chief Financial Officer, Tanya Berry Roberts, who is our Chief Human Resource Officer, and Melanie Tracy Love, who is our Director of Development. You know, one of the things at Vogel is, I think, Tanya, we have probably, can't keep track of it anymore, but I think about 70 staff right now. And it is our biggest asset in terms of the work that we do every day. We couldn't do it without our staff. And I think a lot of employers have the same feeling. But I just got an email yesterday from Gallup that said that they just finished their study for 2024, ending out the year, and that employee engagement across the world has literally gone down. It was at an 11-year low of where it normally is. And so this has become a really big issue, trying to retain employees, recruit employees. Everybody is dealing with this issue, and it's probably only going to get, the projections are it's only going to get harder. And so as we looked at this as Vogel, one of the things that we realized is that we really had to pay attention to our culture and our how we engage our employees so that they want to work for Vogel and stay there, and that we can recruit the best because our kids and families deserve the best. And so one of the things that we set out to do was really to intentionally work on our culture. A lot of people do a lot of strategic planning. They do a lot of planning in other areas, but they kind of just think, well, culture will take care of itself. And what we've found at Vogel and what the experts will tell you is you have to intentionally make culture work for you, because basically, you get what you tolerate in an environment. And so we've really taken this on. I guess we've worked on this for probably the last 3-4 years, I guess.
Yes.
So what we're here today to do on this podcast is really to talk about that journey of why we decided to do it, what we've been doing, what we've learned, and what have been some of the results for us as we've gone about doing this. So one of the first things we did was we set out to create culture fundamentals. And when we talk about culture fundamentals, a lot of people do work and they create values and they make these big statements like, we believe in quality, we believe in excellence, we believe in customer service. But then if I would go and interview each one of those employees and ask them, well, what does that mean to you? Every one of them would give me a different answer. And so what we did is not that we don't have those high lofty values in the organization, but we broke it down and we created 32, I think, different culture fundamentals that are very, very specific to what we do. And actually every employee has one of these little cards, and all the culture fundamentals are on here, and they wear it around their desk, and Tanya gives them out. So Tanya, talk to us a little bit about how we went about this and how you actually orient the employees to the culture fundamentals when they come into the organization.
Yes, Karen. Our culture fundamentals, as you stated, is about who we are. We set clear values, behaviors, and principles for our team members so that they will know exactly what is expected of them at Vogel. And it's not just for our team members. We implement that with our volunteers, our donors, and also with our families. The reason why we do that because we want to ensure that everybody is aligned with what we here at Vogel epitomize.
And so one of the ways we do that is that every morning, every Monday, we take on a different culture fundamental, and an email goes out. So Jordan and Tracy, tell me what some of your favorite culture fundamentals, maybe what one of the hardest one is to do, because we work on them. As soon as we get through all of them, we turn around and we go through the rest of them. And so, but every meeting we do, every staff member gets an email with the culture fundamental, and then at every meeting we start that meeting with, that's the first agenda item, is no matter what meeting we're having in the organization, that we start with our culture fundamental of the week. And so you may want to talk about what this week's culture fundamental is, and something about that, but also what some of your other favorite culture fundamentals are.
Yeah, well, I can go first. Tracy and I were actually talking about my favorite, which is this week's, which is be relentless about improvement. And so as an organization, we are growth-minded. So we think about what's coming next, we plan, and we always try to grow and get better. So it's not about just being okay, but we really want to create this mindset of preeminence where others seek to attain what we've sustained, right? So every day we're doing things with high excellence, but that doesn't mean that there aren't opportunities for growth. And so especially in the things that I oversee in the finance and technology, the world is changing every day, every year, every 6 months. There's new regulations, new threats. And so for us, it's about learning, growing, adapting, and always making the organization better.
I think it's important that as we're learning, growing, and adapting, that we have to make sure that we have great processes. So one of my favorite is to be process oriented. I am a creature of habit. I love a good process, but I also understand that sometimes those having a process and sticking to it all the time and being a creature of habit can be very limiting. So this culture fundamental challenges me to kind of get outside my box and to, maintain the idea of having a process and following a process, but also look at different ways of achieving the goals that's set before us.
And so not only do we send it out to the employees every week and start our meetings that way, we've embedded it in our performance improvement, our performance plans, our annual and quarterly performance conversations with staff. We have a pretty much a quarterly meeting that we let people actually recommend somebody that meets that culture fundamental, and that comes from their peers. And it's very important, and we reward them for that. We also include that in our recognition system, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But so it's not just a thing, it literally is a living, breathing thing, and we look at it every single time. So we set up the system, but then we actually have to go about measuring it. So for the past 2 years, we've used the Gallup 12 employee engagement survey. It really is probably one of the most well-known, literally global, and Gallup is probably the experts on employee engagement in the world. They do a lot of research on this. And so last year, we took on and did it for the first time. It's really simple. It's 12 questions. But one of the most important things as people go about to measure employment engagement, you really have to get people to participate. So both years, we did it again this year, which we'll talk about, but we really work on getting people to participate, because while you get a score, the participation rate is just as important as the actual score you get. So Tanya, talk a little bit about some of the ways you entice some of our employees to make sure that they do the survey. We don't tell them how to fill it out, but we entice them to do the survey.
Some of the ways we entice them to do the survey is we have multiple drawings. The drawings could be gift cards, Nectar points, especially our personal days off. Either it's a half a day or a full day, personal day. Employees love to get rewards as well. When we got down to that 99%, they were looking for that one person. But it was also a piece where you saw engagement within the employees, because they're trying to find out who's doing that, because they love gifts. So we enjoy those things. And especially when they win them, they be like, oh, I won this, I won that. So it's very exciting.
Well, and so last year, as we reviewed that, we get the results, and the executive team looks at it, and one of the areas that we were lowest in, we actually did fairly well. Our score was 59. The best so just to kind of put it in context, the best in class in the world is 64. So we were 59. We set out to improve that. But one of the things that we worked on a lot last year was what we got from the survey was that our employees, while they felt like they got some recognition from the top of the organization, they really wanted recognition day to day from peers, from their actual direct supervisors. And a lot of times you get busy and you just forget and go about your way. So, Tanya, you took on a project, so we decided to take that on and figure out how to increase our recognition for employees. And I know you, with our consultant, did some research on how to go about that. So, you want to talk about how y'all went about finding the mechanism that we now use, which is called the Nectar system?
We used the Nectar recognition program. We went out and we researched about 4 or 5 different recognition programs. The reason why we chose the Nectar program, because it provided a full 360 program, and we can continue to expand as we continue to grow with our recognition program. Plus, it allows us to do points. But the most important part of the employee recognition program is our culture fundamentals, because our employees first, before they recognize anyone, it has to be tied back to Vogel's culture fundamentals. Once they select that culture fundamental and what that employee epitomizes, what they have done for them, either for the organization, in the classroom, for a colleague, whatever it is, everything is tied back to Vogel's culture fundamentals. Then they select the employee's name. We also give points. Everyone in our organization give points. They can give points so that employees can earn prizes. Those prizes can be gift cards. They can purchase them off of Amazon. They also can purchase Vogel swag gear. And one of the things that I love to see is all the images that the staff put on there that shows that how excited they are. And also, we also have a little challenge in there, because we do have team members that love to see who's on a leadership board. You know, am I the leader? How did I get the leader? It is so funny, because they're like, wait a minute, I was the leader last week. Who's the leader this week? So we enjoy the leadership board. We also go back and look and do an analysis. With the analysis, we'll see how many people participate in it and how can we encourage them and engage them more. In addition to our Nectar recognition program, we also have a kudos board. With the kudos board, because some people like the actual physical card, the kudos board is thank yous, congratulations, you're welcome. I mean, it's a lot of different recognition that you can use. If an employee receives a kudos awards card, what they can do is they could provide that card to the human resource director, me, and I will provide them with Nectar points. It is also a great way they can hang those kudos cards outside their door in the employee lounge. It is a great mechanism.
So, Jordan, if you can talk a little bit about why you like the Nectar system other than just the recognition, but from a finance standpoint, I know CFO people don't like gift cards. And want to talk about why you like the way it works?
And so both from just a tracking and reporting perspective, what I like about the online tools, like Tanya said, is you can do some analysis and you can actually see who's using it, how it's working. But from a cost perspective, we can also allocate points in a way that aligns closely with our budget instead of kind of one-off here or there. And so instead of someone having to individually go buy gift cards, which has some level of risk, or try to do drawings from time to time, we create continuity so employees can understand what's expected and what's available. Managers have the opportunity to give out allocations. They can also run reports and see what's reasonable and fair, to say, hey, there are maybe certain departments that haven't had as much recognition, where we can then remind them to say, hey, don't forget to find opportunities where your employees are engaging in behavior that's in alignment with our culture, so that we can make sure they're feeling recognized. One thing I was going to say when Tanya was going over it was I really appreciate how we've created the opportunity to individualize that recognition for the employee in the way that that employee best receives it. And so instead of it just being like, oh yeah, we give points in this digital system, it's really an opportunity for us to say, hey, Karen likes handwritten notes. So her manager could give her a note that then allows her to gain benefit. And maybe words of affirmation versus gifts are someone's way of feeling appreciated, and so it really gives flexibility. And so I like both the security and the cost management.
And I do like the written kind of notes because I when we did the research, I was concerned about going totally lecture on it because some people do like it, and I think we've lost that sometimes in the world of email and text and everything else. That written note. I spent several hours recently sitting down and writing personal notes and 80, 70 Christmas cards for every employee, but it really was a great, it was good for me to do that. And I wrote a personal note. They knew that I knew who they were, what they did. And people appreciate that. If you miss little few lines that they know that I paid attention. And I think that means something to people. So I think that's good. And the other thing I like about Nectar is that as a manager, is if any of my employees that are under my direct supervision get recognized, it sends me a note to say, hey, your employee was recognized for this. And I think that's a great thing, so I can look at that as well and remember as well. So
Yeah, with the Nectar, I mean, me being competitive, I love the points. I love to see the individuals that have the highest, but I really like to see our teams. Our teams get points too. But I think what I love most about Nectar is I'm a person who loves to see people recognized, but I am terrible at doing it myself. So we get 50 points each month to recognize individuals, and it kind of holds me accountable to it because it reminds us that, hey, if you don't use these points, you're going to lose them. So I don't want to lose our points. I want to make sure that I recognize somebody. So it keeps me on track to make sure that I recognize somebody. So I appreciate that tremendously.
So we really took that on, and then our scores of that went up. I don't have the thing in front of me, but it was many points. The fact that we actually looked at the survey, took on a particular aspect, did our research, and then implemented something. It showed on this year's survey that we went up. It was one of our highest scores now instead of the lowest. And so this year, as we just finished our Gallup survey, and we actually went up to 62%. We went from 59 to 62, so we're happy about that, inching closer to 64. But I think one of the things we looked at this year, or going to be looking at this year, is where there are two areas that we're going to take on. One is the question about, do I have the resources I need to do my job? And then the other is that my opinion matters, or my opinion counts. And so, Jordan, we've talked a little bit about this at the executive letter. So can you talk a little bit what we're going to try to do about resources and what that looks like? Because trying to separate this is what I want versus this is what I need is sometimes difficult with employees, but you've been in those conversations.
Well, and actually in line with the culture fundamental being, growth-minded and looking forward, being relentless about improvement, we really wanted to understand what the real need was. Because if I asked Tracy, hey, what do you need to do your job, that may look different from one of our teachers in the classroom. And so receiving feedback at a general level really requires us then to lean into our other culture fundamental of focus on the details. And so by looking into actually surveying our staff, we get to have a better picture of what resources are really needed so that we can then respond directly. And so one of the things we're going to do is survey all of our staff and understand what they believe their needs are and then where those resources are lacking so that we can respond. And so as we come into our budget cycle here in the next few months, we want to be able to articulate funds into those areas to make sure that we're not just buying random things, but we're buying the most important things.
Well, I think one of the other things is for people to realize, especially when you talk about resources, people that sit in my seat or like in your seat are like, okay, we don't have the money for that, or how much is this going to cost us? But like one of the things we realized as we began to look at it was it's just education. So some people were upset by the copy machine on the second floor, for instance, because it kept breaking. And so they said they couldn't do their job because they couldn't print. Well, but what they didn't realize is from their computer they have access to like 7 other printers in the organization. They just didn't know how to do it, and so all it took was sending out an email that says, "Hey, we're working on the second floor printer, but you can also print to all these others." So sometimes it's not buying more stuff; it's just having people understand how to use the tools that we have. And for some people, they were like, well, we would like this software or this software. We already had it.
Yeah.
It was just they didn't know it and they didn't have access to it, but all we had to do is give them access if they needed it. So sometimes it's just finding out what people don't know can also add to that as well.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the nest a little bit later. I think just trying to understand how we're communicating and getting resources into employees' hands.
And so, Tanya, talk a little bit about the other one that we talked about is that my opinion counts. And so I think one of the things we have to kind of break down with that one is how people interpret that question. Because some people think that, well, I gave my opinion and they didn't do it. That didn't mean it didn't count. It just meant that we couldn't do it. So there was a particular project that some employees had asked me for us to do. It seemed like a good idea, but so I said, okay, well, get a quote. What's it going to cost? And so they didn't realize. And so when I went back and said, well, it's going to be about $14,000 per door, and we probably would have about 14 times 28 doors to do. So you start adding that up. And then I said, do you really want me to spend that kind of money on that project? No, we had no idea it was that amount. But that didn't mean their opinion didn't count. Right. It just meant we had to do the research and then make the decision. And then, of course, anytime you have people's opinion, we balance whether or not some things are best for staff, but that's not necessarily best for our families. A good example of that, Tanya, as you know, people always ask us, well, why can't we take spring break off? Well, that'd be nice, and our employees would love it. We already take a week at Thanksgiving and 2 weeks almost at Christmas. But that our families are struggling, and for them to have to take off work if we're not open, so we have to balance that as to that's a great idea, but it doesn't work for our kids or families, and so sometimes, but we want people to know that they do have their opinion count. So talk a little about some of the committees we do have, and ask the CEO. So what are some other ways right now we're doing to make sure that people feel like their opinion counts?
Right now, Karen, we have as you stated, the Ask the CEO box. With the Ask the CEO box, they can ask you any questions that they have in regards to the organization. Those questions are then answered at our staff development meeting. Also, tie that in with our culture fundamentals. Everything we do is part of our culture fundamentals. With that, we have our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee. Our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee educates our Vogel team on the diverse group that we have. We have to because with our employees, our families, we need to be ready and to ensure that we can provide the type of services that we do, the exceptional services that we provide. So we don't want anybody to come in and feel slighted because we are unaware of their culture. Even if someone do come in and we are unaware, by example, we go in and we learn about that. Each month, our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee, we go and look at the calendar each month at different cultures, and we include our staff on that, and we also provide different activities as well. We have our Health and Wellness Committee as well. They provide us different activities as well throughout the week. We are going to increase that by doing outside activities. We have that. We also, as we'll talk about in a few minutes, we also have our Culture Interview Committee. We also have that. Now we have our new employee yearbook committee. So we have that. So we have a lot of committees. But one of the things that we need to look at as we talk about feedback from our employees so that they know that their opinions matter. We're looking at, creating a continuous feedback loop so that when they provide us that information, make sure that we let them know we've looked at it, we reviewed it, and this is the feedback. Even like you said, even though we will not accept that feedback because it might be cause for us or it might not be something that's for our families, at least we want them to know your opinion matters, and we looked at it, and here we are. These are the results.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, even with the Gallup survey, so a lot of times management does surveys, but they never give the results to the employees. So at our January 2nd meeting, I'll go before all the staff and hand them, here's the results, and we'll talk about it. So they know for every question what the results were. And I think that's important, that you actually give that feedback back to them. And just as an example, I think I like the diversities committee's project. So it's not always about a particular people culture, but it's different, special people. And so, can you talk about what y'all's project was for this month? I think that's happening today, isn't it? The cards.
Yes, one of my biggest volunteers is the Notre Dame School of Disabled, and they come every Tuesday and Thursday and provide services to Vogel, and it was the disability of International Disabilities Day. With the International Disabilities Day, it is worldwide, international, and Vogel wanted to recognize them and thank them for the tireless service that they do for us. And so our teachers, our classroom, our kids, they personalize cards for the Notre Dame school, and we're going to be providing them with those cards today, thanking them for coming into Vogel and providing us with those services. Even though a lot of us do not see them because we're in administrative offices, but we hear about it and all the time the tremendous work that they do. So we just want to reach out and say thank you, because if it weren't for you, there are some things that might not have been done, completed.
But all those ideas, they come from that committee. And Friday we have the holiday planning committee. We didn't talk about that, but you
Yes.
always put that together. And we have a big holiday party, which is Friday. But you had a committee of employees that came together and gave opinions. What kind of food do you want? What do you know? All those things that seem simple, but people feel like they're participating. And I know Tanya does a huge thing for Employee Recognition Week at the end of in May, and there's a committee for that as well. So I think that's one way. But as we look at this year, I think one of the things Tanya and I will be looking at is how do we actually put all that down on paper, so that new people coming in have something to know that this is how you can plug in. And so sometimes we do things, but we forget to tell new people when they come
Right,
in.
right,
And
right.
then when they take a survey, they're like, well, I didn't know we had that, or I didn't
Right.
know we did that. So we need to get better about giving them the avenues. But we also are looking at maybe a new thing Jordan found. Can you talk a little about the birds of a feather? Or
Birds
what
of a
is-
feather. So, as I'm sure you've heard if you're a podcast subscriber, Vogel means bird in German. And so our intranet is called The Nest, and we have bird houses all over our organization. And so I was talking in a continuing education, or talking with the leader, and he was referring to a session called Birds of a Feather, which is, it doesn't have a set agenda. It's really a listening session where an organizational leader or a proctor of a conversation can go in and say, hey, what do you think of this issue? Or what are issues that you have experienced, and where do you think solutions might exist? And it creates an opportunity for kind of free-flowing ideas without an agenda to say we're going to solve it. Right, so we referenced our level 10 meetings that we do as an organization, and we have identified, discussed, and solved problems. It's very tangible, it's very tactful. With these birds of a feather sessions, it's really designed to create open dialogue. There's no judgment, there's no good ideas, bad ideas, it's just ideas. And it gives people the opportunity to share, for leadership to take that information. And I think it goes to the core of communication, where it's not that, hey, I'm looking for you to provide me a solution and your solution will be implemented, but really saying, hey, I need to make a complex decision and I want the best information from the best minds, right? So Karen, if you're looking for answers about a classroom issue, you may ask me and I might have a wonderful idea, but I'm not in the classroom every day. So my idea wouldn't be nearly as valuable as a teacher who's working with kids day in and day out, who sees how an idea may be implemented. So it may be a complex or costly idea where you then have to make a final decision, but it gives you the opportunity to learn and listen and take advantage of those creative ideas from the classroom.
And I would say just there's a running theme that runs through this, is that the level of transparency that Vogel displays is, to me, it's outstanding. Even and Karen, I'm not sure if this has been a focus of yours or a goal of yours, but um, how transparent you are with answering the questions, keeping us up to date on what's going on, making sure that we have the information we need to do our jobs. And even Jordan, when he shared the budget breakdown from the executive team, that level of transparency just does not happen, and you're not obligated to do it, right?
Right.
In order. But I think that having that level of transparency just makes us feel secure, and knowing that we're such a valuable part of this and our opinion matters is just, it's tremendous, and I definitely appreciate that.
So while we've talked about, we've created the culture fundamentals, we've embedded them in many areas of our work. We've learned to measure engagement and then address that strategically. The other thing we've taken on is really looking at people that we hire, because a lot of times you can work on culture on the other side, but we work now on culture for people coming in the door and looking at that. So Tanya, we've recently, I guess over the last 6 months or so, we've put together a process called culture interviews. So can you talk a little bit about that and how you've seen that affect our hiring process?
Yes, Karen, we have a process called culture interviews. The objective of it is to ensure that our potential employees align with Vogel, with our culture. And with that, we use it with our culture fundamentals. We ask all of our directors to submit 5 culture fundamentals. Based on those culture fundamentals, we develop interview questions as well as follow-up questions so that we can be prepared for that candidate. In addition to that, we have a culture interview committee. The culture interview committee are team members who depicts Vogel Alcove's culture. It's not leadership. It is someone from all walks of life at Vogel, so that we can ensure that we have a balance as well as a diversified group as well. We meet, get together, we review those interview questions as a team, depending on which position it is, so that we can ensure that we ask them the right questions. Once we do that, we ask the candidate probing questions to gauge and see if they are aligned with Vogel's culture. If they are, at the end of the meeting, we provide a summary to each other to find out, okay, what do you think about that candidate? Do you think that this candidate will align with our culture? If everybody said yes, even if they say no, I provide a summary to you, Karen, as well as to the manager, that let them know this is what the team thinks is this person will be a good fit to our culture, but here are some reservations. Or this person will be a great fit. We highly recommend, because it just seemed like they were been here before. So it is great. What have we seen? We have seen employees come in and embed our culture. They come in and they just start working, engaging with our employees, aligning their values with our values and our mission statement at Vogel. It is wonderful.
Well, I think, and we had to kind of work out process. As you know, everything's a process. And so, because again, when you're hiring, and especially the kind of hiring we do, we need them immediately if we need them. And so we had to work that out. But so it's not, we don't do culture interviews for every applicant. We have the manager goes through the process of screening them, and then the ones that they want to actually bring for some final interviews go through the culture committee first, and then they do a final interview with the applicant. But Tracy, you've been on the culture committee, so how has that been for you, and what have you seen as part of that process?
It's been a wonderful experience. I mean, who has a cultural committee, in the organization? So I think that just to have this is a great thing. But I think what it's given us the opportunity to do is to get to know each other, because there are employees from every department. But I think oftentimes we're doing the interviewing, but also it helps set up the interviewer to interview us to see if Vogel is the right fit for them as well. And so I definitely appreciate that process. I'm sure they appreciate that process. And then also of course, when we're interviewing, they're asking us questions about, what is the culture like at Vogel? And of course, we're telling them about all of the great things that, they would want to hear and what's true. But also, it's very important for us to let them know that there is a strong sense of accountability here. So, we're all about making sure that we hit our goals and we do what we're supposed to do, because the responsibility that we have to serve our families is so important. That is first and foremost. And so I think that those that we've interviewed, they leave with a great sense of what Vogel is and how they can contribute. And if it's not the right fit for them, then they move on. But so far the experience has been phenomenal, and I'm still kind of blown away that we actually have this in place,
Yeah, I
because
think
it just
it's
doesn't
a great
happen.
new addition to what we do. But I think not only is it important for us in our decision making, I think it does set the tone for new employees to know, hey, they're serious about
Yes.
this. If they're making me go through this before I can even be hired, they're really serious about this. So it does send that message. The other thing that we've started doing, and this is just new, like as of last week, we really just started that. A lot of people do exit interviews. I think it's kind of a standard practice in the industry of HR that if you can, unless somebody just literally walks out the door, that you try to find out information as they are walking out the door, exit interviews. But you always have to kind of take that as a grain of salt. You kind of look for things, because sometimes people are mad or whatever, and so they kind of use that to take it out on whoever they're mad at in the organization or whatever. But so we do those, and I think you get some information. You look for themes and things like that with those interviews, so they have a purpose. But now we do something different. We call a stay interview. So instead of waiting till they're ready to walk out the door, we have an interview and talk about why they stay at Vogel and why they're here. So Tanya, you just did a few of those. I think you just did 3 last week,
Yes, I
so
did.
how did that go? And talk a little bit about that process and the kind of questions you ask people and what you learned from the couple that you've just done.
With the stay interviews, I learned that we are on the right track of engaging and retaining our employees. Because one of the questions is, as you said, it's a stay interview. Why do you stay at Vogel? What do we do that you like to stay at Vogel? And they said, we like to stay at Vogel because we learn a lot. We enjoy the children. And it was like, have you ever thought about leaving? Oh, yes, we have thought about leaving. But why didn't you leave? Because Vogel worked it out. I'm like, well, is there something that Vogel did? You came to us and we worked it out? And they said, no, they didn't. Because of the different processes that we are putting in place, especially with culture, it worked itself out. So that employee or employees was like, I am so glad we started working with culture, because the culture is what we do here at Vogel. So the very first question I ask is, okay, what do you think about when you on your way to work, when you commuting to work? They said, well, on my way to work, besides traffic is bad, they said, I think about the children. All of them said, I think about the children, walking up to the building, seeing the children's faces, and then my coworkers and my colleagues, because this is my second family. We enjoy working for Vogel. Our mission here at Vogel, everyone here loves our mission, our vision, our families. It don't care what department you in. We're all one. We all have a goal, and that is our families and children, to make sure they are a self-sufficient family and they're getting everything they need. Another one is, what are you learning here at Vogel? One of them was a teacher, and she stated, this year I learned a lot, because this was the first year we were able as a department to go to the NACI conference. Say, wow. Say, yes, I learned that going to the conference, interacting with other teachers and colleagues, getting new ideas and bringing it back to Vogel. It was wonderful. And just seeing our team members there learning, being involved in group participation, it was wonderful. And also asked them, what do you want to learn? say with the new Nectar, well, with the new Paycor learning system, we have learned a lot in there, especially with Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel. We can have the CEI training that they are updating. They learn more about constant discipline, our directorship training. And, there's another question that asks, okay, what can we do to help you in your role? And they say you're doing it already. And some will say, as you stated earlier, I need new equipment. It might not be that you want new equipment, but it could be that you have the equipment you need in order to get the job done. Let me look into it to see what's going on. And then I reach out to my colleagues like Jordan. Jordan will then, review the technology or whatever the case may be. And then he was like, okay, you have what you need. But 9 times out of 10, Karen, it's just something small that we can do, and it makes a huge difference. It's just that when we ignore the small things and it increases to the big things that, employees do not feel valued. So with our new culture, that's where we're working with the small things, increasing it so we won't have to get to the big things.
And I think that sometimes employees just won't tell you. And so they go around. And so just recently we had a situation where our the person does all our graphic design, he used to tell me, well, I got to go home. I'm going to go home and do this podcast or do videos or whatever. And I'm like, okay, I didn't care. But I didn't know that it was because this computer that's at Vogel didn't have enough memory or whatever to do the job that he needed to do. He wanted to go home and use his own. And then when I found that out, we were quickly put that in a grant that we wrote, and he's now gotten a new computer. It's just we didn't know. And so sometimes it's just little things like that to make sure people know it. So I'm going to do a little experiment now. So Jordan and Tracy, tell me, what was your first question on the stay interview?
The first question is, on the stay interview, is what do you think about on your commute to work when you get to Vogel?
Like you said, the traffic, getting there. And most times I'm thinking about what's on my to-do list that I didn't get done the day before. But overall, I mean, my mindset is I'm so happy to be here. I've worked for other organizations, and to be at this point in my life right now where I'm more mature and more affirmed in myself and assured, I am confident, and I love coming to a job where I see the mission in action every day, and I have the support in place to fulfill and complete what I need to get done. So that's what it's all about.
And Tracy has one of the best offices that over.
Oh yes! Oh gosh! Yes.
Kids all the time.
Yes, I love it. I call our blacktop area when the kids are in the cars out there that are rolling around. They're supposed to just be riding in the cars, but they're playing bumper cars, and the teachers are running after them saying, "No, no, no!" I love seeing that every day, and then seeing the garden, and then having the children pop in my office too. That's the highlight of the day. Yeah.
So on my commute to work, actually I have a opportunity where I have an hour drive every day because I live out of town a little bit. But for me, it's about the opportunity to grow on that journey. And so every morning I'm listening to podcasts, I'm listening to learning, because I am forward thinking in our organization where we say, we want to get to this state in the future. And so you mentioned high accountability. And through that, I know we've got a lot of things coming up. So I'm always thinking through the pieces that make the most value. We meet every week on our L10s to go over our rocks, which we define every quarter. And so I'm thinking through those and saying, what do I do today to move those rocks forward? What am I, who do I talk to? Who do I reach out to? What relationships do I need to nurture? This week we had 2 different vendors who had fundraising opportunities where they held an event either at their business or off-site to raise toys and money for Vogel. And those are the kind of people that on my commute to work I'm thinking through, who can I text when I get to work? Who can I reach out to? because what we do at Vogel is so relationship based that it's really important to move our organization forward. We need a lot of folks behind us to help us do that.
And one other thing that I'm listening to, you're talking about podcasts,
Yeah.
is our books that we have to read
That's
on
right.
a monthly basis. And so I love to read. So coming to Vogel and having the opportunity to get a book to read every month that's based on our leadership or our culture, and that reminds us of the people that we are impacting and serving every day is phenomenal. And so that's what I'm listening to too. But again, what's placed in us and our ability to grow and develop at Vogel is just, it's just wonderful. I mean, everybody just does not get these opportunities, and I never want us to take them for granted. And so I just want us to appreciate and just continue to grow and build. And it's a reflection of the leadership that we have in place.
Exactly.
And so and great leaders build even greater leaders. And so I appreciate the investment. And it's not, I was thinking this morning, there's a lot of nonprofits that serve the communities the community of individuals that we serve. And they just, because they're serving this particular community, they don't have any type of standards, right? They just feel like they can do it any kind of way. But at Vogel, you have to be on your P's and Q's. We
quality.
hire the best of the best, and we should, because of our mission. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that level of excellence and expectation that we have.
Yeah, and like what you were saying, do you think culture really starts at the top? And it's something that you have to define, because if it's not culture by design, it's culture by default.
Right.
And the opportunity for Vogel is that we have a very clear expectation, and we hold people accountable to that. Like
Yeah.
Karen said, we hire, we fire, and we promote, and we reward based on those cultures.
As we all are entering the holiday season, whether you're going to be celebrating Hanukkah or you're going to be celebrating Christmas, I think one of the things that always comes out during the holiday season are traditions, because there's so much of holidays, and they just remind me of family. That's what you have, all these traditions. For each family has their own traditions about what they do, and many of them are steeped around the different holidays that we celebrate. But it's all about family. In Vogel, we try to be a family, and a lot of people say that about Vogel. When you work here, it's like a big family. And sometimes we end up with the crazy aunt, and that we may have to deal with from time to time. But anyway, but traditions are built into our organization, and I think that's important as well. And sometimes people that come in new don't know the traditions. And so, Tanya, can you talk about some of the traditions that we do and what you've done as far as putting that into PAYCOR, so all part of orientation, they kind of understand what some of the Vogel traditions are?
Some of the Vogel traditions are the bye-bye bags. Our annual arts event, teacher staff appreciation, used to be the Bluebird Bash. Those are some of the traditions that we have at Vogel. Then you also have like the holiday store, like we're doing now.
Right.
Our families are there now getting toys, for the holidays. We have the holiday store. We also had the homecoming event, for our families. So.
And we did a big Thanksgiving meal,
We
which
had
we do every year.
we had a big Thanksgiving
And the holiday party.
Holiday party is this Friday, so everybody can't wait to see that. We also do a meet and greet where everybody we go off campus, or we do the happy hour so we can get to know each other outside of the office as well. We always go to a different vendor. They love to go to the meet and greet as well. Our last one was at Community Beer. We also go bowling. We also went to Chicken and Pickle. We also just like to, on a random day, just pop popcorn, and we celebrate the birthdays and anniversaries at Vogel as well. So
communication is a big issue that also creates culture, and when you usually have and a lot of people will probably relate to this, when you talk about things, people always hide behind, well, what's the problem? Well, it's just communication. We need to get better with communication. But what does that really mean? It's easy to say it's all about communication, and some people don't really know how to define communication, which is a cyclical thing. It's like you communicate it in such a way that somebody responds back to you. And a lot of times, especially in the world of email, it's like, well, I communicated. I sent them an email. Well, nobody responded. So you really didn't communicate. And so we tried to set up a mechanism internally where people have the information that they need. And so Jordan's really taken this on, is doing a great job kind of revamping what we call the nest. But you want to talk a little bit about that and what its purpose and what you're currently doing with it?
Even one of the things you'd said earlier about new employees coming on board, if let's say we send an email today about some big exciting thing happening in February, a new employee is hired in January, we forget sometimes to resend that communication. And I think especially for me, when I communicate, I always think I'm clear. I always think I'm, frequent. But what has happened is, in one of our culture fundamentals, is to communicate to be understood. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's where I've taken on moving our intranet from a kind of single page, single site with a little bit of data. Some of it's old, some of it has changed, to creating a more self-service communication tool so that each department can communicate what's important to them and what's important to our staff, so that they can digest that content kind of on their own time, right? So if you're a new employee and you say, well, what are the committees? Well, on their homepage now we'll have a site page for committees, so that if there's information, if there's news, communication, those things can live out there more organically and more kind of long-term, so that if we communicate something, let's say we talked about the point-in-time count that we do for Housing Forward. So a lot of employees volunteer and have for many years, but a lot of new employees haven't, if they have joined in the last year or so. And so by putting out news or events or communication, it gives people kind of a platform to be able to digest that information, rather than looking through emails or, hey, Tanya said we were getting together on a date in December. What date was that? Versus having it on the website. And so I've created a model that allows each department, our family support department, our mental health department, our finance, HR, development, our early childhood education department, to be able to articulate their own unique flavor, right? Even though we talk about organizational culture, each department actually has its own subculture. Mm-hmm. And so much like microclimate or different things, the city of Dallas is a very different climate than Fort Worth, just depending on, all sorts of things. And so for our each individual department, we want to give them the ability to articulate their voice, articulate what's really truly important in their area, because we as an organization, the bulk of what we do is early childhood education. But that's not to say that there aren't lessons to be learned in development, lessons to be learned from mental health, understanding how our physical health and our nurses can interact with our mental health, and as well as our ability to learn. So by putting out information for all employees, it gives people the opportunity to continue to learn and evolve and grow, versus communication being stale and kind of at the moment. It really creates the opportunity for, like what Tanya was talking about, that communication loop, where employees can receive information, ask questions. We have a communication board, much like Reddit or kind of a blog, where employees can post questions or say, hey, I saw Karen today at this event. I was so excited to hear that we received this grant. And other employees can say, oh, I didn't hear about that. And there's dialogue that is able to go through this communication board. And so to me, it just creates the platform for engagement, platform for feedback, but as well as for learning and growth.
Well, and I think technology, which we are talking about here, has been great for communication, but in some aspects, it's actually made communication harder within organizations. And, I think email for sure has made it. Now people actually talk about email as if it's a person, because people don't like the tone of the email,
right.
Even though it really didn't have a voice. It was just, well, they capitalized that, so that must have meant they were yelling at me.
Yeah.
And it really is one of my pet peeves, especially when
Right.
people come to me and I say, well, did you talk to so-and-so? Well, I sent them an email, but they didn't respond. And I'm like, their office is next door to you. Can you please get out of your chair
Right.
and go talk? And we have lost that, I think, with so many people, is just go have a conversation with people. And so many, if you really look at conflicts among employees, a lot of it has to do with misperception. And that gets embedded in, well, I didn't go, because when you actually sit down and talk with a person,
Yeah.
like real live, just have a conversation, you can see their face, you can see how they're being, and they're not mad at all.
Right.
And yet sometimes we have now lost that. And so I think we've got to make sure we do that. And so some of the things we do is, again, like we require that our managers, and I have one-on-one meetings every week with my direct reports, so that they literally are sitting in front of me. We're having a conversation, not just communicating via email. And all my managers also do that with their staff, and I think those are important. We also have L10 meetings, which are part of an EOS system, which is a topic for a whole nother podcast. But we actually are meeting together and actually having face-to-face communication, and I think that's why we have, at least quarterly, I have a face-to-face. The employees see me, even though I try to get around. We've got a lot of them, but I get in front of the whole organization and talk about what's going on, and so that they have face-to-face. And I think that's really very important as people implement things like this. To don't forget the old way of just talk to somebody.
And one of the tools that I'm trying to work on developing is actually a communication template or communication expectations, so that if you're a new employee, you can look at our culture and say, hey, we prioritize personal communication. So if there is an opportunity to have a personal conversation, a personal meeting, prioritize that over a Teams meeting or a phone call or an email. And it is kind of a hierarchy where we can say, hey, we could have done this podcast over Teams and been all at our computers, and it would have been okay. But we get together because of that human element, right? When we talk about in the classroom, our teachers are so engaged with the human aspect of each of these little children, and we want to permeate that through our whole culture.
Even with that, Karen, we also have, all of our directors, we're an open door. It could be that somebody just want to, let me pop in and say hi to Karen, or let me stop in and ask a quick question. Because we have that open door policy, it communicates to our employees that we are there for them. We're not always just in the office, door closed. We are available for you.
Well, and I think this conversation, as we kind of concluded, it's really shows that we put a lot of effort into this, and we are, as we measure it, we are reaping rewards. We've got some challenges ahead, though, so one of the biggest challenges that we have comes with our expansion, and we have been one organization, and it's one thing to deal with culture when everybody's under the same roof, but now we have moved from 1 to 3, and the other thing is that, so we have different locations, and so I'm sure people listening to this may wonder, well, how do you do this when you got multiple locations? Well, we may have to do another podcast about that, because we're working that out ourselves, and especially because, well, it's easy to say, well, we want them all to be like the same, but their purpose is different, and their facility is different. So it's not like just a cookie cutter, like a Primrose or those kind of child care centers where they just look the same everywhere you go, and they're just in a different neighborhood. Our expansion actually have different reasons for being. So while we have the main campus, which we've done a lot at, and that's where a lot of our employees have been, we now have a second site that's north, and it actually exists inside a family emergency shelter, and it has 4 classrooms. But it's very different, because the families that at the main campus, they come, they drop off their kids, they don't live there, they move. But at the North Campus, they actually live upstairs. And they are in extreme crisis because they are in emergency shelter. And so that staff up there, they just have different challenges to deal with. And then our brand new facility that will open in January is actually in South Dallas. But it's not as much for the homeless families as working parents. It's kind of, as we work to stabilize families, we want them to thrive. And so we've started a third site inside the shops of Redbird. And most of those families will be working, but they still need our services. It will also be a large site with 14 classrooms. But it will also be different, because it's not those are working families, many of them working around the corner at the shops of Redbird. And so I think that'll be our challenge as we look at 2025, as we now have 3 sites. How do we maintain the culture and things we've created, but how do we need to adapt those? Because
Right.
while we say we want the Vogel culture, each of those sites is going to be a little bit different. And how do you do, where it's been easy to do big things together, how do we make sure that we can't do everybody together because they're all spread out in one North Dallas and one South Dallas and downtown. And so even just how we orient people, do we have them come to the main campus for everything, or do we go out there? And how does Tanya, as the HR director, have access to them? And I make sure that I'm going out there and like I do my one-on-ones with those directors at their sites so that I see the employees. So there's a lot of those challenges that are forthcoming, so that people will have to sign in for phase 2 of this conversation about how we go about making sure. But what do y'all see as some of our challenges with that as we face that, and how we keep doing what we're doing, but now at 3 sites?
Well, some of the challenges, Karen, is that they will not have access to human resources like on a day-to-day basis like we currently do now at Maine or or you or at the other departments. But by going out there at least once or twice, every other week, that'll help alleviate that. But as the need grows, then we have to be there for them to ensure and to encourage them and to let them know we are there for them, and whatever they need, all they have to do is call us, or when we're there, just reach out to us. Also, with the different activities and the different committees that we have, we have to look at how that's going to evolve as well, because then some of the employees might want to be on a committee that are at the other sites. When we have our committee meetings, are we going to do Teams meetings so that they can be involved? So we just have to look at the different ways that we can involve them, so it just won't be, okay, this is what we're going to do. Everybody have to be involved. And you have involvement, you get engagement, you get a positive work culture.
Yeah. And I think for me, the 2 things that I was thinking about is, even when we originally wrote the fundamentals, they were written as behaviors, but they were also written as principles. So make quality personal. It applies across the board, no matter what site you're at. Now, things like our traditions, those become more complicated. We talked about the homecoming event that we have for the Maine families who've, we've been around 35 years. There's a lot of history, there's a lot of legacy, versus a new location that doesn't have that to bring with. So there are some behaviors that are different, or some programs, some deliverables, but I think from a principles perspective, it's really about holding people accountable, finding communication opportunities to make sure that everyone feels included. But then another culture fundamental, look ahead and anticipate. So I actually think about 2 years ago, Tanya and I were talking about where we would be today. And one of the challenges was our HR platform, our HRIS platform, was not particularly flexible, didn't have mobile responsive. We had physical punch cards, or not punch cards, but a time clock. And the opportunity for us was looking ahead and anticipating where we're going to be to create models and software and tools that are irregardless of location. And so things like updating the Nest, updating Paycor, adding Nectar as a digital tool, really leveraging technology as a driver instead of as a crutch, right? And so giving us the opportunity to respond and to create continuity between sites. So even if an employee is working at Maine one week, needing to fill in at Redbird another, their experience is very, very similar from a technology, from a tools perspective. But as you mentioned, Karen, I think one of the biggest challenges will be in each classroom, the children are going to be unique, right? And having to be individual, kind of deliverable in each classroom, and being nimble and responsive. As we grow, bigger corporations have a harder time being nimble. And so trying to keep that part of our culture where we're very individualized and very responsive will take a little bit more effort.
Well, I think it's kind of, we talked about family when we were talking about traditions, but it's kind of the same thing as parents. If you think about well, I did this. We used to do this because I only had one child.
Yeah.
Now I have four.
Yeah.
And so what you were able to do with four kids versus one,
Yeah.
and now everybody's got a
different.
ball game, everybody's got a this or a dance class, and how do you do that? Whereas before everybody was there, or things like that you just have to adjust
right.
and try to keep the family traditions, if you will, moving forward and keeping them going. So Tracy, what else do you think?
I was just thinking about what he was saying about the cultural fundamentals. I think the cultural fundamentals are so attainable and foundational that they will reign through all of our sites. But then I think about Maine as the only child at one point, and we're going to have to make some adjustments too. Having access to you and having access to you all. Because you're going to need to have to go to these other sites. So we're going to have to stop being spoiled a little bit and allow our team to do what it needs to do to support all of our other areas. So, yeah.
Well, I think it's a good way as we wrap this up this morning. It's been a great conversation. We started with the culture fundamentals and we ended with the culture fundamentals, but I think that's telling because how important they are, that it's what we go back to no matter what challenges we have. Then it's like, okay, well, what are we going to know? The culture fundamentals will not change. It's kind of like, as Covey says, it's the lighthouse. It doesn't move. And so it doesn't matter what site you're at, even though some of the processes and some of the traditions and how we do things might have to alter the culture fundamentals because we've created them. It doesn't matter how many, they are the principles of what Vogel stands for. And so that's very important. So as we wrap it up today, you get one last shot. So if there's something we haven't talked about that you'd like to tell people, or maybe it's that you think if you're going to give somebody advice for starting this in their organization, what would they do? Or if there's something that we just haven't asked you that you want to share that you think is important to this conversation. So Jordan, you want to?
Sure. So my biggest takeaway is if you're thinking about your culture at your organization and you don't know what it is, that means it hasn't been defined. And if you don't define it, other people will. And if you're willing as a leader, especially to have an organizational culture defined by everyone else, I think you really need to step up and say, I'm going to go through the process and articulate what it is that I am willing to tolerate and not tolerate. And, for most people, it's think about that employee who is just the best employee in your organization. What is it about them that makes them so great? Write those things down because those are the kind of things that really articulate the culture in your organization. And so for me, it's a strong encouragement to go out and do the process, write it down, and then hold people accountable.
And a lot of what we got started on was by hearing a speaker at my Vistage meeting as we began to look at, and you've been rereading his book, so can you give people that title and author? So if they want to get started, that's a good place to start as well.
Absolutely. So the book is Culture by Design, and it's by David Friedman. It goes through his journey of the company that he created and the culture that was so permeating throughout their entire organization that others started saying, hey, what are you doing? How are you doing it? And so he created a playbook, right? So Culture by Design is very user-friendly, right? It talks about the process to go through, to go from blurry culture and abstract ideas of who you think you are as an organization to clearly defined accountability. And his big push is don't say, we value integrity and honesty, but to create clear behaviors that are principle-based so that you can say, hey, make quality personal, where those are behaviors that anybody can get around. And it's not the same for every organization, right? And it really does start at the top. So the CEO, the president, the leadership has to take ownership of that and define what it is that the organization's culture will be and then hold people accountable to it.
Tanya, any last thoughts?
The last thoughts, wonderful, Jordan, is to get your employees involved. If you do not get your employees involved or get the buy-in from your employees, then it will be a rough start in order to start any type of culture fundamental program. Because right now what we do a full 360. all of our employees are involved. We learn from each and every one of our employees. So once you get the employees involved, of course, you have your management team, but your employees are your key that is going to drive the success in order to have a positive work culture, because they will be able to provide us with the communication that we're looking for, the engagement that we're looking for, the consistency that we're looking for in order to keep our family the way it is, a family of love.
I agree with everything that has been said. Definitely identifying what your culture is, invest in your employees, but you have to invest in your culture. I don't know, in this day and time and in generations that we're working with all of our generations to come, if you don't do that, I don't know how successful you'll be. I mean, you have to make sure that you have a positive environment and culture that will help people grow and succeed, in life. I think it's because so much of your life is, you being at work, especially in nonprofit, in service. And so if you have to carry the weight of the service and you don't have a good culture, I don't know how you're going to be able to sustain. So invest in your culture.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this episode 9, talking about the culture at Vogel Alcove and how to create a positive culture in your own organizations. If you want more information about Vogel, please go to our website, www.vogelalcove.org. And you can find all kinds of information about how you can donate to our cause, how you can come and volunteer. Volunteering is a big part of our culture. But also, you may want to get a job at Vogel. We've got openings, and so we'd love to have you. So you can find all of that on our website. So thank you again for joining us, and thank you for being a part of the Vogel family. We hope that you can come back, and we also hope that you will subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any of the episodes, and also you can rate this podcast and review it as well. So until next time.